welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am Jessica. I am one of your hosts today, and I am currently recording next door to my amazing co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jen.
And we are really excited for this particular podcast. This is, I would say, one of the ones that we were like, you know what, if we can do this, we would love to do it. We have two amazing guests on today that are going to talk about a graphic novel that I adored, and I absolutely cannot wait for the next one to come out. But first of all, why don't you both introduce yourselves to the audience and tell us a little bit about who you are?
I'll start. My name is Matt Braly, like trolley, and I'm like the writer / co-creator of this graphic novel called Family Force 5. Pass it over to you, Ainsworth.
Yep. Hi, my name is Ainsworth Lin. I'm the artist and co-creator on the graphic novel Family Force 5.
Awesome. And we're two West Coasters working together on this very cool graphic novel, and we're really excited to talk to you guys about it.
And we're really excited to have you here for it. And I have tons of questions. I'm going to keep them to ones that are not going to spoil anything for anybody, because that's going to be a little hard. But one of the questions I want to start off with is, how did you both begin working together? I know, Matt, you obviously have animation background. Your stuff is constantly playing on my TV. My kids watch it all the time. So, you know, we know you began there. And then Ainsworth, how did you two find each other?
So we got connected through our amazing editor at Skybound. His name is Alex, and he sort of took the story and brought me, a number of artists that he felt like really connected to, the tone and subject of the story. And when Ainsworth's work came up, we were both like kind of gobsmacked by how beautiful and cinematic and just pretty awesome it was. Ainsworth, what was your experience on the other side?
Mine was kind of like, it was kind of a cold call from Alex. I just got an email out of him out of the blue, like, hey, we got this project with Matt Bradley. You want to try testing for it? And I was like, oh, I just finished Amphibia like 5 months ago. And I was super excited. When I was watching like the finale, I'm like, oh, this guy loves Super Sentai. So
yeah, he's a huge nerd as well.
Yeah, I assume his next project is going to have something to do related to do with that. And then Alex shows up, hey, Matt's working on like a Sentai-ish kind of thing. You want to work on it? I'm like, oh, all right, there it is. So yeah, it was a neat coincidence. Yeah.
And for the uninitiated, Super Sentai is sort of what Power Rangers is called in Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was brought into it through my brother, who is younger than me, and I was really excited to see this being a Sentai type story myself, because I am a huge fan.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, the appeal to someone who hasn't watched one of those shows, but there's just something about the shine on the helmets that is like irresistible, on those television shows. I don't know about you, Ainsworth, but like that really made an impact on me when I was a kid, just how like beautiful the costumes looked.
Yeah, the costume design for at least Japanese superheroes tend to have a very like rule of cool factor in them. A lot of sharp angles, and they're colorful, so kids love them, so
and they're also like in animation school, our teachers always go on and on and on about this idea of silhouette. Like all the characters need to have different silhouettes. A big guy needs to have like a big silhouette, and like the nerdy guy needs to be thin and small. But like in these Power Rangers shows like Super Sentai, like they all have the same silhouette. But they're creating silhouette with color. So to me, I thought it was a great kind of like, oh, hey, my teachers were wrong,
Yeah. They also love to strike those very iconic like poses.
Oh yeah, they love like they were dabbing before it was cool.
Yes, they were. Yeah, because I mean, in American superheroes, it's mostly just like the superhero landing, right? No one strikes like crazy poses for no reason.
No.
So Yeah, I mean, kids love to mimic these kind of things too. So like, it really gets them help them immerse role play. So I think that's
Yeah.
the appeal of it too.
So we're big fans over here.
So was that the inception point for this project? Was it that you wanted to set out to tell a Sentai story, or was it a character or a vibe, or like where did it begin for you?
Yeah, so great question. Where it really began was that Alex, again, our wonderful editor, he had seen our show and was looking to see if I wanted to like explore in the YA space. He specifically was like YA. So I came with like 3 pitches, like, and we just kind of went down the line. And the last one was like a family of Power Rangers. So it's sort of like The Incredibles meets Super Sentai. And it's about the teen girl in the family who's trying to really balance her life with this family responsibility. And he just was like, "Oh, well, that's it. Let's produce that one," because there was kind of a hook there, a character hook, since you asked, which I think is a great question, which is, sort of taking the Violet, like a Violet from The Incredibles, and really setting the story from her POV in this case.
So one of the things about the story in general, and again, I don't want to give any spoilers, but you did a fabulous job. First of all, when we talk about the art, I said earlier before we started recording that I told Ainsworth I want to eat his art. It is so beautiful. I just could not stop looking at
It's
it.
so good, man. It's so good.
Every
Um,
single time I opened the preview, I just wanted to sit and just go through like the color profile. It was great. But you also, I wanted to kind of make a quick point to what Matt had said. You managed to make these silhouettes so expressive, just like it was so crazy. Just in their like they were expressive. You could tell really just emotion through the art. And just, with the story in general, one thing I adore, and this is something that I've been seeing in a lot of media that could be good for children or YA, but I feel like it's universal, is that you take these tropes that we love, Sentai, kaiju, magical girls is a big thing now, and subvert the tropes. So it starts with the trope of, hey, there were these invaders from space, and this team of multicolored superheroes began to fight it. And then you take it to a place that not only changes it, but makes it very tangible. It makes it feel very real. When you started working together, did you find, like, did you have the script first, Matt, and then Ainsworth looked at the art? Or did you begin to work a little bit closer together as the project progressed?
Ainsworth, you may have to help me jog my memory on this one because, like, so I believe I believe the process we had was that there was a big outline, and then we went into scripts so that we started feeding Ainsworth scripts, and that he would just start drawing them. But he would always do a little bit of pre-design, you know what I mean? Like, so Ainsworth, do you remember getting the big outline and maybe doing pre-design from that?
yeah. So I received the outline in November, December-ish, and then we started immediately doing concept art from there. You already had a few sketches that kind of gave me a basis of to work off of, and then I just translated that into my design. We did a bunch of costume designs. I remember we started with a white and then base color aesthetic, and then we transitioned to black because I was like, ooh, I abide by the kind of rule of cool thing. Black looks really sick. So, and it helps the metal kind of shine too. So that was neat. And then we started working on the scripts, and as I got each chapter, I started making outlines for each chapter. And once we had the entire thing boarded out, we did our revisions, and then we went into the final.
Do you remember, was there much discussion about, like, did you know the ending of the book before you started drawing chapter 1? Do you remember?
Yeah, you had a rough outline of what you wanted, how you wanted it to end, and then we finished the outline, and then we made a few changes near the end.
That's right.
We finished the outline. Yeah.
Yeah, we were always like, I think it was the perfect time to sort of get feedback from you, and then to sort of have you drawing, because then your drawings really helped inform like the scripts that were coming. So it was that's sort of how that collaboration worked. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because we made changes on the fly all the time. Like we get the outline done, and then you Alex and I would look at it and be like, okay, so this can change. We can take this out, or we can add something right here. Yeah. So a
Totally.
very collaborative effort between all three of us.
I'm curious if your background in animation inflects your approach to graphic novels at all, because they are different media, but I'm sure there are some things that are different and some things that are the same. What were the new challenges and what did you feel well equipped for?
Great question. And actually, funny enough, like Ainsworth is in animation too.
Mhm.
So like we're both sort of like animation guys, like making this comic book. So at the start, I really struggled with cramming too much action into one page. And that's something that the writer is supposed to like attempt to do, is to sort of choreograph a little bit of like the action. And I felt like a little bit like, so I each chapter was 20 pages is what I was told, and I was trying to pace it like an episode of television a little bit, so you'd have all your big action at the end of those 20 pages or whatever. And it didn't really work because I was just cramming way too much into way too short a space. So I think that was like a big learning curve for me as someone who comes from screenplays, which is that like, oh, how this is going to look on an actual page laid out. You need to sort of like pace it differently, like slow it down a little bit. You know what I mean? If you really want people to feel the action of this like fight, it needs to be like twice as many pages as you're giving it. Sort of stuff like that was a big learning curve for me.
Yeah, and for the art side, I'm so used to looking at storyboards so we could see every little detail of an action. I had to learn how to like really properly condense everything and make sure the motion is clear, but not add too many panels, because that gets bogged down if you add way too many. So just learning to what are the key poses, that kind of thing. It's very it's ironically enough, it's like taking the early lessons you learn in storyboarding, just using that only. Don't worry about the latter half.
Yeah. Something I could never figure out too, and that our editor kept trying to like make me understand, and to be honest, I still don't quite get it, is that he'll be like, so you want this like on an even numbered page so that when the reader turns the page, oh my God, it's like a big reveal. And I could just
Yeah.
like, my little brain just couldn't really, I was like, yeah, I don't know, like even odd, like where's the reveal? Like I would need to see it, you know what I mean, to really, but he was so good about knowing exactly like how a reveal should hit and that stuff. So I needed a lot of help with that. Like in a screenplay, it's like you don't have to account for the physical action of a reader turning a page.
Yeah, because I mean I think that's the only way graphic novel like artist or author can control the reader's pace, because everyone reads at different paces. They might skip around the whole page itself. So if you want any impact, you need to make sure it's on the next page so they don't suddenly skip to that.
Right.
Middle.
And there's nothing stopping them too from, by the way, picking the book up in Borders and just going like to begin with, and just like they've seen everything sort of like
No power there.
Jen and I actually met at Borders, so we are
Oh,
we are
nice.
well
Yeah.
acquainted. Yeah, we're both bookstore people turned librarians, so we are well acquainted with that. But yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about storyboarding, I would have never really thought about it that way. But storyboarding could very well lend itself to graphic novel
100%.
art as well. And the action lines in certain scenes were just so perfectly chaotic. I mean, I don't know how else to describe them other than they flowed, they were very fluid, but they were just buzzing with energy. So you did a wonderful job
Oh,
of
thank God.
bringing that to us.
Actually, at the beginning of the podcast, you said like this new book that I really loved, and I was like, oh, good, they like it, because
It is really good though. And I am a sucker for Sentai stories. Like I mentioned, and my younger brother started watching the first Power Rangers when it first aired.
sure.
And I remember being like, oh my God, like this is going to take off. And it did. It just 100% exploded. But it really resonated with him. And I found myself becoming invested too. And so that was a sell for me immediately. And then as soon as I opened the book, and we haven't even talked about the characters yet. Like as soon as I met Maisie, and as soon as is it Maisie? Is it Maze?
It's Maisie. You got
That's what I thought. Because the other question I had is it Jiffany or is it Giffany?
That's a joke on Gravity Falls, actually, which is
I'm
like one of my
well
previous
aware.
shows. It's got to be Jiffany because like her nickname is Jiff.
Right.
So let's give it the soft. I guess that's to taste though. I guess it could be either.
Uh,
The creator of the GIF said it's a soft G, so I'm sticking with that.
Somebody tell Seuss, but
I know.
but yeah, no, Maisie is just, she's so great, and she's, even as an adult, she's so relatable. And Jen and I were talking beforehand about, when you have a young adult character in a fantasy or sci-fi story, it almost feels like you either go two ways. It's like you're either like, oh my God, I have all this responsibility and I don't want it, or I wish that I would somehow end up in a magical world.
Yeah.
And Maisie's struggles are so relatable, but you manage to somehow keep both of those things in a very interesting balance.
Yeah, she's really torn, right, throughout the book. Like, and we won't get into spoilers, but like sort of her plight is exacerbated, like, you know what I mean, like midway or a third of the way through. And, I think what we really wanted was for you to see sort of both sides of her issue, which is that, yeah, she's like 16 or 15. She just wants to be a normal kid and go on dates and have goals that maybe aren't what her parents have planned for her. And that's sort of like, Family Force 5 is sort of a continuation of that idea of mixing the mundane and like with the fantastic, where it's like you've got something just completely magical and fantastical, which is like fighting aliens in costumes, but you're marrying it with the mundane of a family business. And so when you do that, like you said earlier, you're able to really ground something that could maybe run the risk of being very unrelatable. So not everyone has fought aliens in costumes, but everyone has had an argument about their parent or with their parents about like their life direction. You know what I mean? So like we really try to, but it's tricky because like, and actually in the writing phase, Ainsworth, I don't know if you remember this, but my big concern was like, oh, is she like, I don't know, are we too petulant? You know what I mean? Are we too like, is she too whiny or complaining about something that is like, but I really do think that you can see how, the demands of their family responsibilities are a lot to ask of a young teen, just generally.
I'd love to talk about your approach to the story's antagonists. And I mean the human ones, not the kaiju quite yet. And I put antagonists in very heavy air quotes because there aren't really any like human villains in this piece. There are people with like different goals and people who see things differently. So can you talk about your approach to like the interpersonal conflict and how that kind of contributes to Maisie's journey?
Yeah, great question. And then let's talk about the design of that particular character afterwards, Ainsworth, because like I think he turned out smoking. But yeah, so this is a light spoiler, which is that in the story, a cousin actually from Tokyo shows up to sort of like get the family on track in terms of like their performance. You know what I mean? It's sort of like that feeling if an older cousin came from overseas and was now having to be a member of the family, but he's also got this kind of agenda where he's trying to, make sure the family business is running a little bit better. I think the goal for this book was always to realistically portray, a family. And, obviously sometimes there are villains in family spats. Like it definitely happens. And you've got like, your evil aunts or whatever, where you're just like, man, but I think generally, you know what I mean? Like these are just people with different points of view who are in a different context and circumstance than you. So this character who comes in and is an outsider to the family, and is installed as their leader, basically, is calling the shots. And there's an obvious friction between him and Maisie and him and Savisa, the mom, as well, that we hope feels realistic. You know what I mean? When you're flipping through the book. So yeah, no, he's not a villain, but you're right that he is the antagonist for this volume. Yeah, Ainsworth, do you want to talk about his look or anything?
Sorry. Yeah, we have this cousin from Japan show up, And obviously he's grown up with a completely different background and circumstance. So his values and what he thinks are important to the family clash very much with this West Coast American family. And there's those kind of like the guy who shows up and he's so much more into this kind of almost authoritarian kind of like way he presents himself and like how he expects to be regarded with complete respect and everything. And
Respect, yeah.
That clashes with like Maisie, who's very much more free thinking. She's used to having her, even though she has clashes with her parents, her parents do listen to her, right? And they try to talk to her. And I think she's more used to being heard. Whereas this guy comes in, he's like, all right, you're going to do what I tell you to do. And then Maisie talks back. He's like, all right, that's immediate punishment. I do not like that. And so that kind of clashes immediately. As far as his design, we wanted him to be very, the cool kind of cousin. He's got the bleached hair and he's wearing a leather jacket and a hoodie combo. It's funny, he dresses like a motor guy, but he doesn't ride motorcycles. He just wants to look cool. He's a bit of a poser in that kind of sense. But yeah, I mean, he's a lot of fun to do. I mean, I think I was also looking a little bit. Ultraman had came out a little bit before we started working on that character.
Ultraman Rising, the Netflix movie, yeah.
Yeah. And I really like the way that Ken looked. So that was a little bit of he doesn't look exactly like that, but like the mannerisms are
the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this character's name is Daichi, by the way. I was realizing, I'm like, well, his name's not a spoiler. But yeah, and Daichi too, like there's a moment near the end of the book where like he and Maisie do really connect. And I think that it's important to show that like, oh, we're in conflict, but like, we are still a family and maybe there's some common ground between us, and they find it. And I think that it's satisfying because he's sort of been bearing down on her like the entire novel. I almost said episode.
I thought, and I had said to Jen, I'm like, man, Daichi is totally cool anime dude.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, it's like what Ainsworth was saying. It's like you'd think he'd have a motorbike, but he doesn't. In fact, like he shows up at the house with a suitcase, and I'm like, guy took an Uber, right? Like
we're not sure if he can drive or not.
Yeah, totally unsure. And actually, he's a character that like I'm very interested in. I'm interested in his sort of pressure from his father and his new life that he's going to have to start here in Los Angeles, like as sort of an immigrant. So like these things are all very interesting. And I think that, again, not to spoil anything, but like I like thinking of him as sort of a, more permanent member of the family, of the team.
Yeah. Daichi, I think he might be one of my favorites. Because like he does come off as like an asshole, to be completely frank, but like you can see, I try to add little moments in his reactions to things that he has to do, and he definitely has his personal own views, but he keeps those always buried deep down because he has an expectation to fulfill, and he tries to keep those personal feelings repressed. But like you can kind of see how he reacts to different things that happen throughout the story, and you kind of get a glimpse of like who he really is underneath that. And yeah, he's a fun character.
Do you guys have cool older cousins? I grew up with like 10 really cool older cousins.
I am the cool older cousin in my
family.
So
flex, okay.
I have older cousins. Definitely one of them I would say was certainly the cool older cousin. That I kind of grew up with. But one of the things that I do really like when like Daichi is introduced, and I also want to talk about Savisa because I adore her.
Also a lot there too. Yeah,
I adore seeing a mom really like being a mom, but also being being a fighter. And I thought that was a really nice touch. But with Daichi, they are so different and similar, Daichi and Maisie, but they're really good foils for each other. And a lot of their stress comes from the same place, even if it's laid on differently. And I thought it was just a really interesting dynamic. So I'm excited that Daichi might play more into later volumes, because I feel like there's just a wealth of story there, aside from the other stuff that I'm not talking about.
Right.
I don't
No,
want to spoil
and
it.
we agree. He's got a great kind of, there's a great seed there, right? For something. Yeah.
Oh, I would love to talk a little bit about the twins.
Yeah,
They are
sure.
really, really adorable, and not to steal
Yeah.
Jessica's thunder, but Jessica is a twin mom, and so I'm sure she has.
Oh,
So
lovely.
I am a twin mom. Their birthday is actually, as of recording it, their birthday is Friday. So
Oh, happy
Oh,
birthday,
happy birthday.
twins.
yes. Yeah.
Yes, so the twins, Alex and Axel are definitely like directly inspired from like the Thundercats twins. Like there's like two, like I don't even remember their names, but they were also like small and lithe and acrobatic and like kind of a pair, right? Like so I loved those two. And it's so funny, you guys, because like when we sat down to write this, you know, the best thing you can do is always like draw from personal experience and draw from your own life when you write, because then there's like a higher chance that it will feel genuine and then it will connect with somebody else. Like that's the whole grift, by the way. It's just that, you know, you hope that humans out there are connecting with this piece. But I knew some twins, but like I didn't know what it was like to grow up a twin. And so like I actually like interviewed one of my friends. I was like, what was it like being a twin? Like did like what kind of things like got on your nerves? Like what things like were you upset that like people packaged you together and always talked about you like in the same way? And this person was so funny because like not only was she an animation director, but her twin was too. So like they were even in the same line of work. And honestly, she said like we loved it. It was like there was two of us for every one of you. You know what I mean? Like so but for the twins in this book, you know, they're a lot of fun. They're very mischievous. They're always like pulling pranks, which I think they're doing because there's two of them. So it's like easy to gang up on mom, or it's easy to gang up on Maisie or whoever. And I think that's like inherently there's a fun runner with them where they're always playing like video games at night, like always. Like mom thinks they're asleep, but they're always up and they're always doing that. And there's that runner actually pays off at the end, which is fun. But I think like from sort of like a observational and character point of view, the most important thing for me with the twins was that like the takeaway at the end was like that they weren't the same. And like in this key, you know, battle climax moment, you have like, you know, Maisie pointing out like, you know, they seem really similar, but they actually have wildly different strengths. And I think that is like such a fun, like, you know, twist on the idea that these two are pretty much like, you know, simpatico or identical or whatever, but like I thought it was a fun thing to pull out at the end.
something that I really love about them is that you really capture the thing that I admire most about children is just like their spontaneous weirdness, you know, and how free they
Yeah.
are with it. And then when you have a twin, you just have a constantly present improv partner who's like, yes, and
Yes.
and like
Yes. And you know, Ainsworth did some really nice acting on the two of them when they are doing that. They're a little Greek chorusy, right? Like where they're commenting on things. Like, yeah, Ainsworth, do you want to talk about like you stage things for them sometimes, right?
Is there a specific panel you're referring to? Or-
Yeah, like anytime like I'm trying to remember like, you know, when Maisie is getting lectured on the couch, the twins are always like off to the side having like a mini, they're
Oh,
like
yeah.
commentating sort of, or like if Maisie's like training, the two of them are in the background also commentating, like you perched them sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, kids, I don't know. When I was approaching them, I mostly approached them to the sense of like, I was looking at, there's an animation studio in Japan called Trigger, and they have these very expressive ways that they draw characters.
Yeah, they're
Those
great.
two, I was thinking of Trigger a lot when I was posing them and making them do their little wacky antics and flaying their limbs around and stuff like that. But yeah, no, just like sometimes sometimes kids just kind of sit in the background and just they like to talk, you know?
Yeah, they do like to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. My only sort of like, I feel like we're pushing believability that they're like, I feel like they're young. They're so young to be doing this like alien fighting stuff. So like, you know, there comes a time in the book where like Maisie is sort of struggling and I'm like, but the twins are doing fine. You know what I mean? But maybe that's because there's two of them, you know what I mean? And they can sort of like rely on each other. I don't know.
They also haven't hit that hormonal growth spurt yet, so they're
That's
still
true. That's
still
really
fine.
they have blessed simplicity with their
Yeah.
like
They just
eat.
think their job is just beating up monsters every
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
day.
That's
They're
true.
fine. They're doing great.
That's true.
I mean, you do see flashbacks where Maisie feels a little differently about her job too, and it makes sense. I mean, not to be pretentious or whatever, but it could be a bit of a coming of age and just sort of looking at your life differently. I did
Yeah.
find, and this is not a spoiler, I really liked the expansiveness of the fact that like they're not the only Sentai unit. There's units all over the place. And as you said, like the fantastical and the mundane, like, kaiju are as common as the weather changing.
Right.
It's just a really interesting way of looking at it. And, I guess like me becoming a little bit more of, I don't want to say pessimist or whatever, but like, sometimes like things that are crazy are going on and everybody's like, oh, another time. Yeah,
Oh,
let's do another one.
you're totally like hitting the nail on the head. Like I think we're totally inspired by crazy things like global warming or, governmental crises where it's like, oh wow, it's amazing how much actually people can put up with and like just keep going to the movies or whatever. It's like, oh, a giant tornado and you know what I mean? Like, like just everything kind of just keeps on trucking. Yeah.
They get desensitized to these kind of things. So that's generally what the population kind of feels, They it was like in the 60s the aliens came down?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
1975, the same year that the first Super Sentai show debuted in real life. That
Hey.
was like that was the head
Egg.
canon. Yeah.
Yeah. But after decades of this happening consistently, people are just kind of tired of it. It's really, it's interesting seeing it because like you wouldn't think that would happen, but then you'd see real life, you're like, okay, no, that makes sense. This actually does happen. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, I love you have a great panel in the very first pages where like they get like an alert, like, oh my God, like there's an attack, like an alien attack, and someone's like, man, the traffic's gonna be murder or something like that. Like, and I feel like, okay, that's it in one sort of like panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was captured really well. I can't remember the name of the anime, but there's one older one where there's this long sequence of just the military kind of coming in and doing things in a city, and everybody's just sort of going about their day like this is business as usual. And, sometimes I get really depressed about this stuff because it's like I want to be running through the streets going Soylent Green as people. And everybody's like, yeah, we knew that. We knew that like years ago. We're eating people. What's your problem with it? So
Totally.
yeah.
Was it Evangelion? Because like
It might, first of all, I love Evangelion. It might have been.
because I know that like that show has that crazy like they're all still going to high school, but then like, okay, kids, you gotta head to the bunkers, and then like the buildings turn into like big like war zone like barricades and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that show's another one that starts off a certain way, and then you're
Yeah.
just like, oh, what am I watching? I'm gonna
Well, and that's
never be forever.
you mentioned why is that so appealing? It's because you're taking something that was so simple and like idyllic, like caped superheroes fighting, and you're bringing like a lot of like grounded nuance to it and sort of like that sort of I mean they call it like a deconstruction or whatever, you know what I mean, but like it really is just like, oh, what would this really be like?
Most definitely. So first of all, thank you, Jen, for letting everybody know, yes, I am a twin mom. And so is Savisa. So let's talk about her because I really loved her. She was like this strong backbone, and I felt like, you know, it must have been really tough to be her because she chose to marry Ken. She chose this life, and then it became, well, now you're a superhero and you have to raise your kids to be superheroes. And I felt, that was such an interesting pressure to put on somebody.
Yeah, so for me, what I love about Sabi Sa is that she is actually an outsider. So, and she's being brought into this very like exclusive, tight-knit operation. And I hope that if you take away anything from the book, it's that, you know, clearly this woman is also struggling with the pressure of her in-laws, like, and the weight of their responsibility. I thought that was just such a fascinating, because, you know, we when you marry into a family, it's, you know, it's not an easy thing, and also cross-cultural. So Savisa's Thai. She's married into this Japanese family, and not only is it a Japanese family, but it's a Japanese family that has this incredible like responsibility. So I think you're taking a situation that would have been a little bit like you're threading a needle to begin with and like amping it up. And I think there's no better demonstration of this than when Daichi does show up to kind of take the reins, and Savisa sort of says, yes, sir. You know what I mean? Like, if this is what the family has decided, then like I support you. And I think that she's such a strong personality that, like, not that that moment seems out of character, but like I think as the kids, you're her kids, you're sort of like, what? Like, mom, like, are you sure? I mean, this blowhard just showed up, and like, shouldn't you be in charge? And I think it's really demonstrating sort of the complex situation she's in. But yeah, and she's also like disciplinarian, and she's got to rein in these kids, and you know what I mean? Like, and she also like kicks ass. So there's this really interesting kind of like, I love, there's a scene in the book that I'm really proud of, and I'm so proud of it because we sort of went back and forth, like the editor and I, like, oh, do we need this? Is it really important to see her brother's restaurant? Like, I mean, I don't know, like it's a really interesting thing. But there's this great scene where the family goes to eat out at Savisa's brother's restaurant. So now you're seeing a little bit of Savisa's world, and Maisie goes to talk to her uncle. So this is the Thai side, the non-Japanese side, and he's kind of like asking her uncle for a little bit of advice, you know, like, hey, we're in a tough spot, and like, you know, I don't really know what to do. And he like has a picture of his sister when they were younger, and she's like a judo champion, and he says like, she's tough, man. Like, you don't know this, but like your mom's like tough, and you know, she more than you think. And I think that those kinds of, like, Maisie is learning about her own parents in this book, and I think that stuff just feels like, you know, realistic, where you're like, oh, I didn't know mom was a like, you know, street gang member or whatever, you know. Like
Yeah, no, she was cool, and I loved that scene, and I'm really, really happy that it's in there because, you know, becoming a parent and the kids seeing you as disciplinarian, or the
yes,
person who tells them to stop watching YouTube, the person who tells them it's time to go to bed, and then you find out that not only did they do cool things, but they were people, is,
imagine,
yeah,
yeah.
right. You know, is kind of an amazing moment where you're just kind of knocked at the back of your head, and you're like, listen, this person has to be your mom, and has to do this, and has
Yes.
to do that, and has to stop the twins from doing what they're doing.
Yes,
But before all of this, there was a whole sense of self that she had to build up for herself.
totally.
And, you know, I think as a mom, it becomes, you know, or as a parent, or just in general, you know, you try to fight it sometimes. I mean, there are some people who are like, no, this is me, this is who I am, and that's fine. But I know for me, as much as I love my kids and love being a mom, there was this really weird push and pull moment where it's like, but I'm not, I'm all the things that brought me to this moment too.
Yes.
And that's not something you see a lot, especially in a lot of these stories. And I loved it.
Right. Well, just know that like all we're ever trying to do is just make the characters feel like real. Like that's so hopefully these little nuggets, because it's so funny, it's 200 pages, which seems like a lot on paper. It's not. Like, and like when you're reading the book, you're just like, it's like watching, like it feels like watching a 20-minute episode of something. So like we have done our best to make sure that there's as much texture as possible in that like time frame, and I'm really proud of like all the little ways that those moments have manifests, whether it's in Ainsworth's amazing acting choices and drawings, or maybe it's the scene of them at the restaurant, or those choices. But like, just know that our goal is always like, oh, these are like real people.
This has been really lovely. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
It really has. Do you have a certain amount of planned, I was about to say episodes, but books for this
Yeah.
series?
No, and I need to like get back to writing the second one like now. So it's so funny because like I left for paternity leave. I just had my wife and I just had a son. He's like a little sweetie. His name's Alex, and he's adorable. But like, yeah, right before that, like he actually came quite early, so I was supposed to be like be a little further than I am. But we have a second book that we're working on. We're so excited that it's, kind of picking up where the first one ends. The first one ends a little bit with like a fun little sizzle at the end. You're kind of like, oh, what's that supposed to mean? Like, where is this going? So like I think that it will be fun to sort of explore that and continue to pay it off and really get into the characters that like were great, but like we're only supporting characters in this book. Like I would love to feature the twins a little bit more. I would love to feature Sabisa a little bit more. Just like really start getting into their heads and feeling their points of view. Ainsworth, what do you want to do from a arts point of view? I don't know how you're going to top this thing.
Well, one thing that this is my own personal gripe, but I wish I had more time to do more design for the city itself.
Oh, cool.
So I do want to go back and like maybe update some of the shape language of the buildings and just give it a bit more of its own identity. Because when we were working on this was like we had a really like tight deadline for this whole thing. So
very
I didn't
tight,
have
very tight
to do all the viz dev that I would have liked to do normally. And so one of the things that fell on the wayside was probably vehicles and buildings because yeah, I just didn't have that time to do all that stuff. So I might go back and it's like maybe we can find an in-universe explanation of how like maybe why some things are updated.
Sure. Yeah. Hey,
it could just be just a thing that only people who actually pay attention will notice. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Oh, I'm excited about that.
I'm also excited to get to all the characters because I read your outline for the next one, and I'm so excited to see when people read more into these characters.
Yeah, I mean, we have this huge promise at the start of this book where we're like, here's the LA branch, but we basically say there's like a bunch of other branches. And so like as an audience member, you're like, when do I get to meet the rest of the family? You know what I mean? And so like that's something we need to be very careful with because like we can't dump like 30 characters on you like in the next book or something like that. We need to start introducing them so that you're like, wow, I love this new character, and like, oh my God, there's more coming, so that you love like each new family member as best that we can. Cool.
And that's not even to talk about like Maisie's school life and those characters,
Oh, I
because those
know.
characters were great too. It's just really everybody, this is such a good book. It is so good, whether you are coming at it new, whether you know Matt's work from animation, whether you are familiar with Ainsworth's work, just read it. It is beyond good. I was very surprised in a good way about a lot of things. Like I said, I have so many questions, but I cannot ask them because I do not want to spoil anything.
We can do that we can have a spoiler podcast after the book is out. You know what I mean? Where we really tear it apart. You know what I mean?
Please, please put us on your list. I would so be down for that.
No, that stuff's fun because we're really tiptoeing around like a big seismic like event in this book.
We really are. But yeah, no, it's just wonderful. Pick it up, check it out. And yeah, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Our pleasure.
Of course. Thank you for having us. It's really nice talking to you too.
All right. This was Jessica with Turn the Page podcast. Our guests today were
Matt Braly
and Ainsworth Lin.
And my amazing co-host was Jen.
Muted.
Jen.
I'm Jen. Goodbye.
And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.